Hey guys, it's Nick, the ASMR nerd, and welcome to another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Today, guess what? I've got another mechanical keyboard up for you. This one, however, has a claim to fame. Evidently, this keyboard is the most funded keyboard project on Kickstarter to date, which is kind of an interesting little tidbit and says something about the interest level and demand for what this keyboard offers. This board today is brought to us by a company called Drevo, and if you've been around the channel for a while, you might remember that one of the very first keyboards I ever reviewed was from Drevo. It was their Excalibur keyboard, and it was okay. It wasn't bad by any stretch, but it was a little rough around the edges. There was a bit of jank. At the time, Drevo was a pretty new company, but that's going back about 2 years now, and they've had a lot of time to grow and mature, and it turns out they've actually gained a bit of a cult following, one might say. They've had some very successful lower cost keyboards like their Grammar and their Caliber that are favored by some people for their unique layouts and good value. What we're looking at here today, the BladeMaster, did begin its life as a Kickstarter. It's now available direct from Drevo or on Amazon. Special thanks, of course, to Drevo for sending this board along for us to take a look at here today. And as we're going through this review, if you like what you see and would like to check it out, maybe pick up one for yourself, there are, of course, links down in the video description, and I think you'll probably find a couple of discount codes down there as well for various Amazon platforms in different countries. You're going to have to go check it out because I'm not quite sure what there's going to be down there. But anyway, links down in the video description as per usual. So the BladeMaster actually comes in 2 different flavors. It's a tenkeyless mechanical keyboard. The Pro version is wireless, and that's what we're looking at here today. It's wireless, it's got a metal backplate, it uses cherry switches, genuine cherry MX switches. There's also the TE version, which uses Gatoron switches, has a plastic backplate, and is wired. And as you might expect, the price points for these 2 models are quite a bit different. The BladeMaster Pro that we're looking at here today comes in at about $150 US, depending on your switch options. It might be plus or minus $10 or so, depending on which switches you configure it with. That's a pretty hefty price tag. That puts it in direct competition with a lot of the big names, things like Corsair, things like, Steelseries, Logitech, Razer. They all have boards around that price point as well. The TE comes in a fair bit cheaper at about $90 US. And again, it has the Gatoron switches and the plastic backplate and is wired, which helps bring the price down. But today, as I said, we're looking at the BladeMaster Pro version, the wireless version, and it does have a lot of desirable features. It's got that tenkeyless layout, genuine cherry switches, it's got RGB backlighting as well as side lighting, which actually makes it very similar in some ways to the Royal Kludge G87 keyboard, which I reviewed very recently. So interesting points of comparison between those 2 that you might notice throughout the review. And of course, like I said, it's wireless, not just one kind of wireless, but 2. It's got a 2.4 gigahertz USB wireless receiver, as well as Bluetooth connectivity and wired connectivity. But one of the biggest selling points of this board is its unique control knob, what Drevo calls the genius knob. I don't know how genius it is, that's what we're here to find out. But in short, it allows you to scroll the knob, click the knob, or double click the knob on the side of the keyboard to execute various functions like controlling the backlighting, but you can also bind it to do whatever you want, basically, using Drevo's software, at least so I'm told. So, an interesting board with a lot of different features today. I'm very keen to check it out. So, without further ado, let's take a closer look at Drevo's BladeMaster Pro. Okay, so here we have Drevo's BladeMaster Pro in box. And I should say, in the spirit of full disclosure, that I've actually partially unboxed this once already for reasons that I'm not going to get into here. But if it doesn't look quite as pristine and clean as you're used to in these unboxings, that is why, and I apologize. I've tried to put everything back just the way I found it, so it should be representative of the unboxing experience if you're buying this brand new. So you can see that the Drevo aesthetic is still here. If you remember way back when unboxing the Excalibur, this has similar elements, but I would say it's definitely matured a bit, and it looks a fair bit better. The design of the packaging. Over here, on the left-hand side of the box, we've got the Drevo logo up here, and this kind of yellow piece with all kinds of, well, an award, some kind of finalist in the 2018 something or other. Not quite sure what. Drevo Radii, or Radii? I don't know if the Radii. I guess that would be two eyes. Radii. RGB. Drevo Radii. MX. Cherry MX switches. So as I mentioned, this board has genuine cherry switches, which in part accounts for the price. Cherry switches tend to be quite a bit more expensive than Chinese clones. And then over here, on the right hand side of the front, we've got a big full color glossy image of the BladeMaster Pro. And of course down here in yellow lettering, BladeMaster Pro. And of course this keyboard is available in a non-pro version. I believe they call it the TE, the Tournament Edition perhaps, which is very similar, but it lacks the metal backplate, and it's wired, so it doesn't have the wireless capabilities of the Pro. This one is the more super deluxe version with all that good stuff. So the front looks nice. Let's see what else we've got here. Nothing too much there except a very subtle BladeMaster Pro on the side. Drevo branding on this end. All kinds of barcodes and stuff on the spine here, as well as the information about this particular keyboard. BladeMaster Pro model, Drevo BladeMaster tenkeyless, mechanical or wireless, I guess. It says there, yeah. Model number, and then a bunch of switch options. There's quite a variety of switches available. Your usual selection of cherry switches, and then a couple of less common ones, the speed silver and the silent red. Now this one's marked, as you can see, as speed silver, because that's what I requested from Drevo, because I was very curious to try them out. They have a shorter travel distance and a higher actuation point, so they're supposed to lead to faster response times, but they're a linear switch. However, the board inside here is not equipped with speed silver switches after all. It actually has Cherry MX Silent Reds, which is also a very interesting and different switch that's designed to be quiet. It's a very light actuation force, very linear. Well, not very linear, it is linear. and it's very, very quiet. They're designed to bottom out quietly. So you'll see that and hear that a bit later. So that was a little mistake, a little oopsie on Drevo's part, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. I can deal. And you can see here it actually says that we've got 32 additional extra keycaps included, which you will also see in a moment. So that's kind of a nice pack-in. And another Drevo icon or logo on that end. And then on the back, we've got a lot. There's a lot to see here. So over here, we've got, you might not be able to see that super well, but of course one of the standout features of this board is its genius knob. Just the most pretentious way to describe it, but it's a control knob. It lets you control the lighting as well as a variety of other functions that you can control or set in the software. A fully programmable knob allows you to use, or allows you to, I'm trying to read this upside down, assign macro, multimedia, Windows shortcuts, batch, etc. If you just need to run your batch files from your control knob. Triple connections. So this is a big selling point of the Pro version of the BladeMaster. Wired Bluetooth or a 2.4 gigahertz connection that's theoretically faster and more stable than Bluetooth. And then a rundown of features here in all kinds of different languages. Big picture of the board here in the middle again. Wish I could get it closer, but I really can't. Closer to the camera, that is. Backlighting adjustable with the powerful DPC, the Drevo Power Console. That's their proprietary software. And then over here we've got, talks about onboard memory, the RGB backlighting, and designed for durability with Cherry MX switches. So those are all the selling points, the major selling points. And of course we've got this very standard tenkeyless layout for the keys, which is nice. I like tenkeyless boards. Now, that said, I know some of you don't. I know some of you prefer full-size keyboards, and I've got something coming for you as well. It's been a long time since I looked at a tenkeyless, or a full-size board here on the channel, but I've got one of those coming down the pipe. But I do think, honestly, that the tenkeyless layout is best or ideal for most people, because I think most people probably don't need the numpad. I know there are situations where it is valuable, but I think many people don't actually need it. And so a tenkeyless is a great compromise for saving space. All right, let's open this thing up. I'm just gonna pop open this. To begin with, it was sealed actually by a couple of little, you can see there, little Drevo branded stickers, little seals. And overall, the packaging's pretty nice. It's fairly professional looking. It looks like something that you might expect from a big name like Corsair or Logitech or something. It's, or even Razer. I think it can stand with those ones. inside here, first thing that you notice is vacuum packed keycaps. We've got a whole bunch of blanks in black and some in this bright yellow, which is kind of a nice accent color to the black and gray of the board itself. Obviously matches the yellow on the front of the box, like so. And I haven't opened those yet, but we'll actually open them up and check them out. I'm not sure how they feel, what material they're made of. ABS, I think. I think all the keycaps on this board are ABS. The keyboard itself, very well protected in here. We've got cardboard spacer in the front and in behind, and then two big foam pads on either side that hold the keyboard in place. Very nicely protected, not going to get damaged in shipping. And then this plastic dust cover on top of the keyboard. So let's, I don't know if you can see, but I'll take this out here. This piece of cardboard reads "Game with Cool Tech." I think we can all agree with that. Game with Cool Tech. That's just a piece of cardboard. A few other pack-ins here, which we'll take a look at in a moment, but we've got a brush, a wire keycap puller, which is great to see, and of course a USB cable with a nice Drevo branded cable wrap there. Keyboard itself, nice and heavy, very weighty. In stark contrast to the Royal Clutch that I reviewed last week, this thing is hefty. Feels very solid. Let's put that over here just for a second. We have a user manual. And that's it. Nothing else in there. Let's put the box aside. And we'll start off by looking at those keycaps. Okay, so as I said, they're kind of vacuum packed in here. In this plastic. Let's use some scissors and see what they're all about. You can hear the pressure release there. It's funny, I've never seen vacuum packed keycaps before. They're sealed for freshness. Okay, so they're just kind of a jumble in here. They're not held together in any, any sort of frame. But we'll just pull a couple out and we'll look. So here is one. Now that's an interesting thing, isn't it? This appears to be a double shot cap. You see? The cap itself is this yellow. Then if you turn it around, you'll see it's yellow on the inside too. So, oops. So it's not just a coating, it's the plastic itself is yellow. And then inside that, the double shot part, you can see it's got this translucent white in there. Hopefully you can see. And then that's what produces the shine through effect. Pretty sure that's what's going on there. It's decently thick too. got a nice thickness to it. And in fact, I don't even think this is ABS. This feels more like a PBT material to me. I could be wrong about that, but it feels very sturdy and well made. And we've got a whole complement of those. We got Escape, WASD, and arrow keys in those colors. And then here we've got just solid black blank keycaps. So you could use these caps to replace the stock ones if you wanted to. And you might want to. I'll show you why in a second. It's a little bit foreboding. The stock caps on here are laser engraved. They're coated with sort of a matte material, and they're a bit thinner than these pack-in extras as well. So I actually like these caps a lot better than the stock caps. We'll take a look at the stock caps in just a moment, though, so you can see what I mean. But those packing caps are nice. Don't get me wrong; those are really nice to see. There's quite a few of them. Let's look at our other pack-ins here in the plastic bag. We've got a brush, which is a very thoughtful pack-in that you actually is surprisingly uncommon. It's something that I'm surprised you don't see in more keyboards. It's a very soft brush. Plastic. Very nice. Help you clean the board. And look at this, a Drevo branded keycap puller. Big Drevo logo and the name on there. And then, of course, a wire keycap puller, which is far and away the better style of keycap puller. Less likely to damage your caps and easier to use, in my opinion. So, actually, a great thing to include. So, the pack-ins there look really nice. Oh, and yes, the USB cable. Interestingly, like I said, Drevo branded Velcro tie here. We've got Drevo branding on the casing, on the USB-A end of things. Again, these are things, little touches that you see in these higher end boards. They cost a little more, but there is a nice attention to detail in terms of the production and branding. Probably a 3-foot cable-ish. You've got the ferrite choke here. And this is what I wanted to show you. It's a right angle USB Type-C connector. That's kind of neat. You don't see right angle cables packed in all that often. Also, Drevo branded here. Is it better than a straight cable? I don't know if it's better, but it's different. So there you go. Cable looks pretty nice. It's not braided, unfortunately, but it's reasonably thick. It feels pretty good. And finally, we've got our BladeMaster Pro user guide here with something inside this like says the little monster, or don't like, oh no, sad monster. Look at this warranty information. You can return it within 10 days after the delivery date for any reason. 30-day money-back service and lifetime tech support. You can process an RMA through them. presumably it's got a warranty after that as well. Lifetime tech support. What does that mean, though? If the product no longer works under warranty, lifetime multi-language customer support. I'm not quite clear how long this warranty actually lasts for. Interesting. And then here's some social media bits and pieces if you want to contact them or interact or whatever. I'm going to look into that. I'll let you guys know how long the warranty actually lasts for, because I must imagine it's more than 30 days, but I don't think it's lifetime warranted. It's a little unclear. Yes, I'll look into that. And then the user manual looks quite stylish. Nice colorful picture of the board on it. It's got a bit of a Razer look to it with like kind of black and rainbow colors going on. It tells us connection indicator on the side there. Power indicator. Contents. Did we get everything it says we should have? Keyboard, obviously cable, keycap holder, dust sheet, small brusher. Yes, we got the small brusher. Operating manual and service card. Yes. 2.4 gigahertz receiver. Oh, I don't think I put that back in the box. I'll have to go grab that in a second for you guys. I told you I had unboxed this and tried to put it back together, but I think I left that out. And a sticker. I did not get a sticker. I am disappointed. Only a little bit though. Anyway, it shows you keyboard shortcuts here for controlling lighting and such. As well as talks about the software, how to update your setting profile into onboard memory of the keyboard, a whole bunch of other stuff, troubleshooting, and I had dip switches. Oh, look at that. They had me bamboozled. We did get a sticker. Look at that. That's an extra sticker. Holy cow. That's very shiny, holographic Drevo sticker. I stand corrected. Thank you for the sticker, Drevo. Yeah, dip switches on the back. We'll look at those in a second, but they control some functions. You know what? I'm probably not going to go get the USB receiver because you probably don't care. You know, I'll tell you, it looks like a USB receiver. It's like a tiny little thing. It's black. If I remember, I'll show you later, but really it's nothing special. It's not Drevo branded. In fact, it is identical to the USB 2.4 gigahertz receivers that I have for my Velocifier boards. I have two of those that work with the same receivers. Now, I don't think that they will detect those other boards. I think each receiver is programmed to a specific board, which is kind of frustrating. But anyway, they look identical. All right. Let us look at the board. Here it is. Dust cover, as called out in the manual. Drevo branded. Lots of good branding, I guess, custom work going on here. It doesn't really matter if you're using generic pieces or custom pieces, but when you do see the branding all over everything, it at least lets you know that they've got all these pieces custom made specifically for their products. Somehow it makes it feel like a more premium product, I guess. Anyway, this is the Drevo BladeMaster Pro. And it is a sharp looking board, I must say. It is, I believe, inspired by weapons, blades, I guess. It's a BladeMaster Pro after all. But you've got this very sharp looking, it's not sharp feeling, but sharp looking leading edge here with the Drevo branding centered on the keyboard. That looks nice, or on the space bar, excuse me, which looks great. Because this is the BladeMaster Pro, the back plate is a nice thick anodized, I was going to say aluminum. I think it is. I think it is aluminum, but it's thicker than the aluminum back plates you see on a lot of other boards. It feels much heavier and more substantial. So from this kind of blade-like front edge, and the Drevo branding you can see is chromed, catches the light there. We come around this side. We've got these sort of cut off edges. The material on the side here is plastic, so you can see there's a line right there where the plastic joins the metal, but is the same color, matches quite well. Worth noting that the TE edition of this board, the non-Pro, has a plastic backplate and actually comes in black, I believe, whereas this one is considered space gray. I'm pretty sure the Pro is only available in space gray. So we've got another cut off corner here. We come around the back. This surface is metal still, so it's really just these sides that are plastic. Metal all the way along the back. And then things get a little more interesting over here. Again, this is plastic. This knob, however, is the Genius knob, and it is metal. It is textureless, more or less, slightly concave, and it rolls like so and clicks like so. And this is one of the big selling features that Drevo pushes with this board, or is proud of with this board, perhaps I should say. What they consider to be a big innovation. Now, you can't see it really very well here, but you'll see it much better in a few minutes. But along each edge, we have a little thin strip of translucent plastic, and this is the side lighting. I must say it blends in very well when the board's not on. You don't even know it's there, but it's on all four sides. 360-degree side lighting, and spoilers, it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. So let's deal with the back before we flip it over and talk about these keycaps and switches a bit. So, as I said, it is heavy. This thing is hefty. I have to look up the exact size of the battery in here, but I bet you it's substantial. On the back, we've got quite a lot of stuff, actually. We've got, well, let's start here. We've got a USB Type-C connector. No cable channels for routing cables, unfortunately, but that's okay. Oh, actually, well, you kind of do, actually. I lied. Take it back. You could route it out right here. In fact, that's what these are for. Look at that. See, there's a little routing channel there, and that will let you run the cable out either side here and off in that direction. I guess you kind of need that because it's a right angle cable, right? So let's just pop this in here just to demonstrate. There we go. Oops, a little bit stiff, but there. And then there, that routes that way, and then heads on out that way. Or I guess you could take it all the way out the side if you wanted, but I guess you'd bump into these feet. Anyway. Okay, so that's nice. I thought about that, clearly. Also here in the middle, though, we have these little switches. Dip switches, which control, they turn the wireless on and off. They also control some other functions you can see here, mostly for Mac mode or for different weirdo layouts like the Dvorak layout. So those are little hardware switches for those things, which is kind of nice. We'll talk about that a little bit more maybe when I'm showing off the lighting and features. And then over here we have a quick reference for keyboard shortcuts. In the middle there, we have a molded Drevo logo. And we've got quite a few rubberized feet. We've got one in the middle, one on each corner at the bottom, and then also we've got them here and on the other corner and on the flip out feet. So there and there. The keyboard has, by default, a natural incline to it, so it's never going to sit completely flat. I'll show it to you in profile once again so you can see what I mean. It's got a bit of a wedge shape to it, but you can, of course, bump it up a little more, tip it up some more with the pop-out feet there. I think that's pretty much everything on the back there. It says designed by Drevo. I don't know if you saw that there, right above the dip switches. So that is the back of the board. It's made of plastic, obviously. It's textured ABS. Doesn't pick up fingerprints too easily. A little bit. You can see some, but not too bad. But most importantly, it's very solid. Feel this, or listen to this, I guess. There's no hollowness anywhere in there. And I bet you, why don't we just do a quick flex test? I bet you. There's almost zero flex to this board. It has got a lot of rigidity, very high structural rigidity. And that's, again, a manifestation of this nice thick metal backplate and just the solidity of this whole thing. Okay, so let's talk keycaps. You can see we've got a full set of these sort of almost satin finish caps on here. They have a very soft touch feel to them, which is somewhat pleasing, but I think they're prone to shining up quite a bit because it is a finish. It is not actually the plastic. It's sort of painted on. Let's pop off the escape cap here. It's a coating. So here we have this nice satin-like coating. Gives it this really appealing look and kind of nice feel, but I get the feeling it's going to shine up and get gummy and really get those finger oils on it quite easily. And if you come around the side here, or the back, excuse me, we can see that the cap itself underneath is white, translucent white, that the black is just a coating, and that it's been laser etched on the front to provide the legends. So these are not double shot caps. These stock caps are not double shot. They're also a little on the thin side. Like I squeeze them, you can see them flexing. They're quite a bit thinner than those extra pack-ins, which look really nice and thick. They're also, I would say, thinner than most caps that I find, even on cheaper boards, which is a little disappointing, honestly. A little disappointing. Now, this was a design choice by Drevo. I'm sure they made it for a variety of reasons, whether it was cost savings or aesthetics or whatever. The one thing that this laser etching of this finish does get you is you get these really nice sharp legends. And these legends do look very sharp, I will say that. nice and crisp. I also do like the font that Drevo has chosen for their legends. Overall, it is a little bit edgy, gamery, slightly, but only slightly. Much better than what they've had on previous boards, including the Excalibur. And overall, I mean, the aesthetics of this board are hard to fault, in my opinion. I think it is a very unique looking board, thanks in part to these angled corners, but also this blade-like front edge, and of course, the Genius knob. So they've done a lot to make this standard tenkeyless layout stand out visually. Of course, the big drawback of keycaps like this that are not double shot is that they are prone to wear. Now, having not used this keyboard extensively, I can't really tell you how much they're going to wear. Maybe get years and years of use out of them before they start to wear. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that this style of cap will eventually wear, more so than a double shot cap will. You're going to start wearing or chipping off that coating. Again, I can't say how long that's going to last, and it could be a very long time indeed, but they're still not going to be as durable as double shot caps. Okay, keycaps, slightly disappointing aside. Also worth pointing out that the secondary legends are printed in the same way. So you can see some secondary legends, enter or return. I don't know why it has both, but, or alt or command there. We've also got a little Drevo logo on the space bar. Again, a nice looking set of caps. I just don't like the feel quite as much as some, a nice textured PBT, and I don't think they're quite as durable. Last point of interest before we start looking at the lighting and stuff is these switches. This is a Cherry MX Silent Red switch, and you can see it's actually more of a pink. The stem is kind of pinkish. But you can see the Cherry branding on it there. It is the RGB version of the switch, so the LEDs are surface mounted, and the light shines up through the switch, that clear housing. But the big selling point of these switches is that they are quiet, and you can hear, or maybe you can't, but if you listen, they are very quiet. They do live up to their reputation in that sense. They are basically just a Cherry MX Red. Same actuation force, which is 45 grams, very low. Same linear response, so there's no bump in there at all. No tactile bump, no click. Same 4 millimeters of travel distance, same 2 millimeter actuation point. Really nothing out of the ordinary there. They're just Cherry MX Reds, except they bottom out quietly. And I'm honestly not sure what they've done, if they've just put some kind of pad in there so that it bottoms out quietly. I don't know. I will say it makes the bottom out feel kind of mushy. You don't get that sharp report when you bottom out like you do on a conventional switch. You get a sort of just a dampened, mushy feeling, which again serves well to keep it quiet. Not as satisfying under the finger, at least in preliminary testing. But of course, I'm going to have to do some extensive typing with it, some gaming, all that kind of stuff before I can really pass my final verdict on the Switch. And this review is not about the Switches per se, it's about the board, but I will let you know how the Switch feels. But of course, bear in mind the keyboard's available with all your regular complement of Cherry switches. Okay. So, all that done, we've looked at the packaging, the pack-ins, and the board itself. We've had a pretty good tour of. It's time to take a look at the features of the board. So we'll look at the lighting, the wireless connectivity, and the software, and then of course the typing test. I know everyone's favorite part, although we'll see. There might not be a lot to hear with the typing test because it's so darn quiet. Anyway, next up, backlighting. And here we have the BladeMaster Pro plugged in and looking very, very colorful. Quite gorgeous, actually. I reviewed quite recently that Royal Kludge G87, which is actually a very similar board to this in many ways. And I praised that one for its good backlighting, nice vibrant colors, and smooth gradients. But I have to say, in an objective comparison, side by side, this Drevo board, the colors are even better. The gradients are even smoother. And I think the backlighting is actually brighter on this one as well, at its maximum brightness. So we've got, of course, the backlight, and then we've got the side lighting, which is these little strips, these little bars down each side. And I'll show you quickly that it goes all the way around. It's on this side here. It's on the front there. It's on the back here. And it's hard for me to turn this all the way around because it's plugged in right now. But trust me, it's on the other side too. So that's a really nice side lighting implementation, I must say. And it synchronizes nicely also with the backlighting. You can see that they move together. So as this rainbow wave is crossing the backlights, it's doing the same thing across the front of the board, for instance. So it's all very nicely integrated. It looks really sharp. If you are seeing any flicker in the LEDs, that is, as usual, just an artifact of the shutter speed of the camera. There is no flicker visible in real life. In fact, this is maybe the smoothest lighting implementation I've seen on a keyboard, and I don't know if it's the LEDs they're using or if it's maybe this matte space gray background that just helps sort of diffuse the light, or maybe it's the matte finish on the keycaps as well that sort of helps give it this soft, smooth gradient look. But honestly, it's very, very well done. And the first impression is very favorable. So let's take a quick look through the lighting settings as they exist on board here. And we'll look at the software after. Now, of course, an important aspect of this board is this button right here, which might be tough for you to see. I tried to get a bit more ambient light in here so that you could, see both the backlighting easily as well as this knob. But there's a knob. It's right there. It's metal. It's smooth on to the touch. There are no dimples or notches or anything on it. But it scrolls in a somewhat clicky fashion. And it can be used for a bunch of different things. Right now, I have it set to control the lighting, the backlighting specifically. So if I go function insert, that is what sets it to control the backlighting. It can also control other things too. If we go function delete, it'll control backlighting intensity as opposed to backlighting effect. So let's just turn this knob, and if we turn it down, you can see that we can turn down the brightness of the backlight. We can turn it back up to get back up to maximum brightness. And it looks like the backlight and the side lighting adjust together in this case. See if I turn that down, both are dimmer. If I turn this up, both are brighter. And if we go function home, that controls the speed of the effect. So let's scroll that down So that slows it right down. I imagine this is as slow as it goes. Very slow waves. But if I crank it up, there we go. Full speed ahead. Okay, so as opposed to pressing like function home repeatedly, you just press it once to set it into this mode. You use the knob to control it. Let's slow that down a bit because that's a little bit much. There, that feels a little better. I will say that the knob's a little hard to use because it has no notches, no bumps, nothing. I don't have a whole lot of purchase on it, and it is metal and it is smooth. So my finger slips on it a bit. I have to apply a fair amount, well, not a fair amount, but some pressure to it to get it to turn. It's not terrible, but I do wish they had put some little notches. I think that would really help with the traction on there. Just help my finger grip a little better. Okay, and then in addition to scrolling like this, we can click with it. If we click once, backlight turns off. Click again, backlight turns on. If we double click, side lighting turns off. Double click again, side lighting turns on. Very functional. I like that. Okay, so let's see what our different options here are. And I'm going to try and keep my hand out of the way. I'll have to put it in the way to adjust things, but I'll move it so we can see what's going on. So, okay, so there's one, it looks like a solid color backlighting option. And the side lighting looks like it's actually turned off in that mode. Yeah, it turns right off. Okay. Maybe if I double click, double click. Nope, there's no side lighting in that option, or that mode. Let's see what's next. Ooh, that's pretty fancy. So this is a breathing effect across the whole board, including the side lighting. Oh, and it's changing color as well. What else? Okay, so this is a raindrops type effect. And it also includes the side lighting. Might be hard to see from your perspective, but every once in a while it triggers the side lighting. Yeah, I'm going to turn this a little bit so you can sort of see the front as well. It gives you a better idea of, I think, the whole scope of what's happening. Alright, what's up next? Okay, this might be the type where we press a key. Yes, and it illuminates. Oh, and it illuminates sort of randomly the side lighting as well. Like, watch. Every once in a while, you can see the front bar lighting up there. Interesting. What else? Oh, wow, that's pretty extra. That's very busy. Looks like a carnival midway, doesn't it? It's neat, but it's a lot. Wow. Okay. All right. What's up next? Classic. Shooting out from where you press it. But again, the side lighting does add a lot, doesn't it? You can see, you can watch the lights shooting along the side light there. Next up. Nothing, evidently. This looks like backlight is just off. Also, you might notice as we go, each time we switch the backlighting, a different number key is highlighting. I don't know if you can see that, but different number key highlights in white to show which setting we're on, I guess. This is 9. What does 0 do? Oh, maybe 0 was off. Was 9 the carnival? Or no, 9 was the, I see this one. Okay, 0 is apparently off. Okay, we've got, I guess, just a solid one. I thought we had that already, though, didn't we? So this is setting 1. Interesting. Maybe that's a custom setting of some kind. 3 gets us back to the rainbow. What is 2? Okay, so 1 and 2 look pretty similar. Oh, I see. 2 is cycling through various colors. All right. And 1 just appears to be solid color. So if that's the case, then what was 4? Because I thought 4 was solid color as well. Oh, but every time I press a button, the side light flashes. Oh gosh, what is happening here? Oh, it changes as you type. It's reactive. Maybe it changes with your typing speed? I'm not sure. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Let's go back to the solid color mode here. Number 1. And if we go function end, I believe we can now cycle through different solid colors. Yes, we can. It sort of fades between them as we go, as we turn this knob. Interesting. All right. Has a lot of different gradations, however you say that. Interesting. Lots of different, yeah. Okay, cool. Let's go back, function insert, and let's switch back to the old rainbow. So I always love the rainbow ripple. So that's a fair few options available through hardware controls. I think there are more in software, which we'll find out in a moment. But before we get to that, I wanted to address some of the other features and functions here. So you can see there's a little light on here. And I believe this little light above my finger, right by the knob here, indicates the connection status. So I'm connected via USB to my PC right now, but if we go function, so that's function print screen, sets USB mode. If we go function scroll lock, we are now in Bluetooth mode. And you can see the color of this little light changes to blue. And if we go function pause, we are now in the wireless adapter mode, that 2.4 gigahertz dedicated wireless USB adapter. And the color changes yet again. I have both both the USB wireless adapter and Bluetooth working, and they both work quite well. I've not noticed any input lag on either of them, although I'm sure if you want to get it down to the very lowest possible lag, you'll want a wired connection or that 2.4 gigahertz. I believe both have a 1000 hertz polling rate available to them, whereas Bluetooth does not. I don't know what the typical latency on Bluetooth is, but so let's switch it to whatever, back to USB mode here. And you can actually adjust that polling rate with the function button, and then function 1, 2, 4, or 8. You can see how, maybe you can see, they have the little milliseconds next to them, 1 millisecond, 2, 4, and 8 milliseconds. And so that actually corresponds to a 1000 hertz polling rate, 500, 250, and I don't know why you would want a slower polling rate. You might as well just have it on the highest, I guess. Although, I suppose polling rate and battery life are probably linked. So, if you had it like this in the wireless USB adapter mode, and then you wanted to save some battery, you could set it to the function 2, say the 500 hertz polling rate. So now you get a 2 millisecond response instead of a 1, but I'll just keep it on the fastest here. You can also see when you hold down function, it's maybe hard to tell when it's so busy. Let me just, I'm just going to turn this to solid color mode. That one, I guess. I don't remember which one was a solid color mode, honestly. But if you hold down function, you can see certain keys light up to show you what settings you have enabled. So like the 1 millisecond shows up here in red. The pause button shows up in red to show that I'm in the wireless USB connector mode. Insert shows up to show that the knob is set to color adjust mode or lighting setting adjust mode. All right, let's go back to the rainbows. I just really love it. It's a really gorgeous implementation of the rainbow wave, and the side lighting just really makes it come to life. So there are a couple of other functions that this scroll wheel appears to be able to do. It can do media controls if you press function page up. And it can do, I think it can scroll. It'll be page up or page down if you go function page down. This will act as a scrolling on pages, like web pages. In fact, I'm just going to test that out here just to see how that works. Let's see. You can't see it, but yes, it does in fact absolutely work. I believe that changes the function of the clicking as well and the double clicking. Don't remember what they do in this mode, but they don't adjust the backlighting. Oh, I see. So double click is end. Maybe single click is home. Yes. Okay, so we got a home and end and then page up, page down in this mode. And then in media mode, I believe it's previous song, next song, play, and pause for the different functions on that wheel. Okay, back to color adjust. There we have it. All right, so I think that's an overview of all the hardware functions that are available on here. Like I said, the lighting implementation is really gorgeous. I put it down to high quality LEDs. And then the matte finish on both the backplate and the keycaps. As much as I don't really like the feel of these keycaps, it's hard to argue that they don't look great. They do look fantastic when paired with this backlighting. I'm also going to put it back in USB mode because I suspect that you can only do the software configuration when the keyboard's in wired USB mode. So this little knob is... well, it's there. I don't know that it's strictly necessary. I mean, everything that we've done here so far, you could easily do with keyboard shortcuts, the function button on a secondary function layer. But it's kind of a nice little novelty, I guess. I just wish that it had some little notches in it to improve my traction on it. I just find it a little slippery to use. It does feel solid. Each click feels very nice. When I'm rolling it, spinning it, it feels very nice. I just wish it had some texture to it or something to help me grip onto it a little bit better. As far as the connectivity goes, as you've seen here, easy to swap on the fly between the 3 connectivity modes. They all work quite nicely. I did get the Bluetooth paired earlier, prior to the demonstration here, and it paired no problem, so no issues there. This board uses Bluetooth 4.0, which should be reasonably energy efficient and compatible as well. Okay, so with all that aside, or out of the way, let's look at the software next. All right, so here we're met with our first unfortunate obstacle with the software, and that is a sign-in. It looks like we have to make an account, which is something that Razer makes you do, I believe, and also something that NVIDIA makes you do with their drivers. And it's just really annoying because it's totally unnecessary. Now, in theory, this is to allow you to synchronize your profiles across multiple devices, but in actuality, I don't think I've ever used that feature for a piece of hardware, and I'd like to have the option to not have to sign in. which it does look like Drevo software provides. You see this offline option down here. However, if I click offline, email is invalid, please re-enter. So it doesn't appear to allow me to use the software offline, and that sucks. Shame on Drevo for forcing you to make an account with them and sign in. I do not like having to do that. But of course, for you guys, for the sake of this review, I have done so. I have made an account. I've given them my email. So let's check this out here. Wow, it'd be great if I could type properly. Okay. I have not tried this software yet, so this is all going to be brand new. I've not made it past this step yet. Also worth pointing out, before I could use the software, I did have to update the firmware on this board. And that was a bit of an involved process, but Drevo made it very clear on the download page for this software that that had to be done first. And there are step-by-step instructions for doing it. So you download a thing from them, go through several updaters. I did get the firmware updated. Then you download the software and install it. So here we are, after a little bit of work and making an account, of course. All right, let's sign in. Goodbye, software. I'm waiting for a window to appear, but nothing has appeared. Ah, there we go. Okay, so it's detected my BladeMaster Pro 87. It looks like they also offer mice and mouse pads, but obviously I have neither of those, so we're dealing with the BladeMaster Pro. And I guess these over here are where we want to do our business. What's this? Okay, Drevo store link, website, feedback. It says that it's plugged in right now and charging, I guess, which it is. It's on wired USB mode. I did notice, okay, what's all this? English, cloud backup. So you can enable or disable cloud backup. You can enable or disable auto run at Windows startup, which is good. You can upgrade from here, it looks like. And you can export offline profiles. The one thing I did notice was that at that title screen or that login screen, there was a little gear icon like this up at the top, and the only option under it was import offline profile. So I guess you could export here and then import from that login screen without having to enter the software. But of course, you wouldn't be able to configure anything. You'd just be able to import a profile, which is a bit silly. This should be the latest version of the software, but let's just see what happens if we check for upgrade. There you go. So it checks both your software and your firmware, and it says that both of them are currently up to date. So that's good. Profile manager. What's all this? Okay, so we can... yes, so the keyboard lets you save profiles to 3 different slots. You can go function F1, F2, F3. Those correspond to profile G1, G2, and G3 here. So it looks like we can save profile, bind it to one of those slots, and then we can switch between them on the fly, which is good. I see, we can click the board here. Now this gives us more options. We'll just stick with the default active profile. It will be saving to G1. Oh, you have to go function control F1. My mistake, not just function F1. And what does this let us do? Okay, so we can rebind any key by the look of it. So if we wanted to rebind X, for instance, default is X. You can disable. You've got all your keyboard functions. If we wanted to rebind it to B for some reason, look at that. X is now B, but we don't want that, so let's reset it to default. You can assign macros. You can run batch scripts. Again, I'm not quite sure why, but you can. Mouse functions, multimedia functions, window shortcuts, and you can launch programs. So pretty rich per key editing here, and it looks like every single key can be rebound. which is nice. Yes, it would appear that way. The Genius knob. Oh, did you see that animation? Very slick. Very slick. Okay. Please click one of the 4 buttons to program the Genius knob. So let's say a single click. Oh, I see. I have to click it here. My mistake. Okay. Press function page down to enable the Genius knob functions. Ah, yes. Okay, so by default, like I was explaining, they are keyboard home and page up and page down. We saw that earlier. Well, you have to take my word for it, but trust me, it did. That's what they do. But okay, so here we've got some tool tips showing how the different function insert, controls lighting modes. We went through all that. Power control. What the heck is this? Oh, we've got a little tutorial. Okay. This interface isn't bad. We've got lots of tool tips. Okay, so function page down to enable the Genius knob layer function. Okay, we've got different layers, layer 2 or 3. Ah, okay. So function page down. Let's just try this. Let's go function page down. And then enable power control. To enable access to layers, wired mode must be enabled. Only one layer is accessible in wireless. Huh. All right, so let's say the trigger key for layer 2 of the Genius knob is going to be, I don't know, up on the keypad. Successfully set. Okay. So now let's change those controls to, so do we have to hold that key? Press and hold, yes, to activate. So let's say we wanted a single click of the button to be delete for some reason. Let's just say we want it to be delete. Okay, so this is the same as rebinding a key on the board. Let's make it delete. Save that. When you mouse over it, it says it's delete. Okay, so now, oh, we're still on layer 1 though. Drats. Okay, let's set that back to default. Let's go to layer 2. Okay, so now let's go here. Single click wheel set to delete. Save that. Now let's, I don't know what assistant is. We're not going to worry about that right now. But let's go to, let's just open Notepad here. We've got Notepad open already. Oh, just going to fill your screen full of random writings. Let's just do that. And now, do we have to press and hold up? I wonder if that changed it. Now let's try. See if delete. No, that's not working. Function, page down. Yeah, we're in the right mode. Press and hold the up button. I'm not sure how I know if it's changed profiles. So the double click worked for end. Interesting. Maybe I have to save this out somehow? I'm not sure. This should be bound to delete. It says it is. Layer 2, triggered by up. Press and hold. Alright, let's take a look at the assistant. Ah, I see. Okay, the assistant. I'll expand things here. It just disappeared, but there's a tray menu that appears. So I was hoping that pressing and holding control would. Okay, this is a little more complicated than I thought. I imagine it will work. I'm just going to have to spend some time with it. I don't want to waste your guys' time right now, so I will play around with this on my own time, and hopefully I can get it working, and I'll let you know once I'm talking to you face to face again. We'll just leave that for now. But what else? Okay, here we go. Let's get some backlighting control going on. So these are the various effects available to us. Static, spectrum. This goes through the various colors. Oh, this is the one where colors change as you type, maybe? No, never mind. It just cycles. Oh, look at that. We can turn on a dark mode for the software. Sure, let's do that. It's probably nicer for your eyes. Rainbow. We've seen that one. Power gauge. I'm not sure what this one does. That one appears to be fading through. I don't know what the difference between spectrum and a power gauge is. Breathing, straightforward. Twinkling stars, straightforward. Reactive. That's where when you type on it, things show up. Marquee, like I said, it's like a carnival. That one's intense. Aurora. I think that's, yes, that one. Or custom. You can select different clusters of keys. You can select, of course, the brightness for all of these. Oh, we can change the direction as well. We can do top to bottom. Oh, that's kind of nice, isn't it? Okay, let's slow that down. Very good. On custom, can we do a per key? We can. Yeah, we can. Now, how do we select our color? Let's say we want to effect layer. What is this? Add a new light effect on the default backlight and it will apply to all default effects automatically. Not quite sure. Oh, here's how we select color. All right, so we've got our standard RGB for our 16.8 million different possible options. That's nice. So let's just make this key, I don't know. Oh, you hear that? That's my stomach. There we go. And let's make this key. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that is working. Very good. I'm not going to go too much more in depth there, but it appears to be quite functional. And then for some of these effects like static or where you can select colors, you can either do single color, for instance, the twinkling stars, or you can randomize the color, it looks like. All right, and finally, what have we got? Oh, so bright now. Other varied settings, game mode. Yes, game mode lets you disable Alt-Tab, Alt-F4, and Windows key, just like we saw in that Royal Kludge software, actually, in the previous review. Keyboard sleep time. Interesting, in various modes. USB connection mode, backlighting, and in Bluetooth mode. You can set different sleep times. That's kind of good. Oh, and another handy tooltip. This is in seconds, and we can set the polling rate. It's currently set to 500 hertz. Maybe I never switched it back to 1000. That's funny, because it... Sorry, I'm hungry. My stomach's making all kinds of noise. It says that it's set to 1000 hertz, but it doesn't appear to be there. I'll do it in software here. And a full keyboard restore. Okay, so there's a lot here. This is pretty rich, fully featured software. Generally, the software looks well made. It's pretty clean. It's got some fancy animations. This is a little confusing. I imagine I'll get there. But it's all very well explained in the tooltips, which I really appreciate. That's a nice touch, and it seems well translated as well. Now, what else do we have over here? Macro Manager. Okay, so we can create and record macros, insert specific delays, just as one might expect. Batch Manager. Okay, so we can, again, run batch files. That's right, I forgot that that's a thing. Why? I don't know, but it's an option. That's kind of cool. It's not something I've seen before. or game statistics. What is this? Does this show how many times we've pressed keys? Maybe. I guess we can select a certain application. Maybe it'll provide us a key map. Also not sure about that, like a heat map of usage of keys. I'm going to check that out on my own time as well. So this doesn't get too much longer. But that's interesting. So I have to let you know about this feature and about remapping the Genius knob. But otherwise, I think you've got a pretty good idea of what the software here looks like. It seems to be well done. It's just a shame that you have to log in for it. That's the bummer here. Anyway, we've had enough of a look at that, so it's time for the typing test. Okay, so we've had a chance now to check out the BladeMaster Pro extensively, from the lighting to the connectivity to the software and the typing experience. And there's a lot to talk about because this is a very feature-rich board. Let's start at the beginning here. There was a few things I promised you I'd look into and let you know about. The first one is the length of the warranty. It is, in fact, a 1-year warranty, as I surmised, but weirdly, it didn't really specify that in the manual. It talked about a 10-day return window and then a 30-day return window, but yes, it's a 1-year limited parts and labor warranty, according to Drevo's website. Item number 2, that USB adapter, let me just pull it out of my pocket here. The USB receiver, this little thing right here. I promised I'd show it to you because I forgot to pack it back in the box when I did the unboxing. As you can see, it is totally generic. There is no branding on it. It is low profile, so it's not going to stick out too much, but there's nothing to differentiate it from any other generic USB receiver that you might have. And in fact, it is identical. As I mentioned, I did compare them. They are identical. It is identical to the 2 receivers I already have for my pair of Velocifier wireless keyboards. There's no way for me to differentiate them. So I hope I don't get them confused at any point, or else I'll never be able to tell which is which. It would be really nice to have some Drevo branding on there, wouldn't it? Especially since they branded pretty much everything else in the package, but no luck there. The other weird thing that I realized, and probably the reason why I didn't have this in the package, is because there's no slot on the keyboard to pop this into. It's typical or standard practice to have a slot on the back of the board that this pops into so you don't lose it when it's not plugged in. No such thing on the BladeMaster Pro. Seems like a really weird oversight if you ask me, so you better not lose it, and you better not get it mixed up with your other generic USB receivers. Now, granted, most people probably don't have that problem because most people don't have like 50 different mechanical keyboards like I do. 50 might be a slight exaggeration, but only slight. So maybe that's a problem unique to me, but still weird. I would like to see branding on it. I would like to see a place for it to be stored on the board, just for transport even, you know? Anyhow, that's the situation there. Third thing that I wanted to talk about here was rebinding that control knob. You saw me struggling with that a few minutes ago as I was playing around with the software. And most of the software is pretty good. Like I said, the interfaces make sense. The interface for binding that knob to custom functions and figuring that all out is actually quite poor. Now that I've had a chance to grapple with it some more, I did get it working, and it works like a function layer, basically, each different setup that you have for that knob. So first of all, you have to press function and page down to set it to the custom control setting. And then you have to hold the key that you've bound for toggling that layer. And while you're holding that key, then you click the knob or double click it or rotate it or whatever, scroll it. And that will execute the functions that you bind to those functions on that layer. The software just doesn't make it that apparent that that's what's going on. But the biggest problem that I found, and I did, as I said, get it working, I bound it to the backspace key. The biggest challenge is that it seems to have some lag inherent in it. When I had it bound to the backspace key, I used control as my trigger, my modifier key for that layer. I press and hold control. I'd single click the scroll wheel, and it would take about a second, maybe a little less, but about a second before it would execute the backspace. And that persisted through wired mode and both wireless modes. So that's not so good. And I do have the latest firmware and software installed for this board. The other weird thing is it didn't just backspace once. It would do like the whole row. So it's like it was triggering multiple times, or it was treating it as if the input was held down or something like that. So I don't know why you'd want to bind the scroll wheel to backspace, but if you did, that was just what I decided to test with. If you did, it wouldn't really work properly. And so there's something funky going on with the custom binding on that control knob, and that's not great because that's one of the big selling features of this board. Turns out the Genius knob, maybe not so genius after all. That being said, that strikes me as the kind of thing they could probably fix through a firmware update, so hopefully, if Drevo's aware of the issue, that's something we see in future. As it stands right now, the custom functions on that knob, a little bit wonky. Last thing I want to talk about before we get to the pros and the cons, which is obviously very important, I just wanted to talk about the typing experience on the Cherry MX Silent Reds, because these are a new switch for me. This is not really a judgment on the board itself, because obviously it's available with an entire array of Cherry switches, but just for the sake of interest, I don't like Cherry MX Silent Reds, and I kind of figured I probably wouldn't. It's not a big surprise. I like a bit of tactile response when I'm typing. I prefer something in the middle, like a brown switch, but blues, will suffice. I've never been a big fan of linears because the only feedback you get is bottoming out. And with the Silent Reds, you don't even really get that because they're designed to bottom out in a very soft, mushy kind of way, which feels just bad. It just doesn't feel satisfying to type on. Now, if you are in a noise-sensitive environment and you must have a mechanical keyboard, but it must be as quiet as possible, then maybe the Silent Reds make sense for you. Or if you're a big fan of linear switches and you're not bothered by the lack of sort of a tactile response under the fingers, then maybe you won't mind the Cherry MX Silent Reds so much. But they're not the switches for me, let's put it that way. Nevertheless, it was interesting to experience them, and let me express again, this is not a knock against Drevo, because again, this keyboard can be configured with a whole array of Cherry MX switches. It's just simply a statement about the Cherry MX Silent Reds and my preferences, my personal preferences. Okay. I believe that's all the extra stuff that I wanted to follow up on here. So it's time to run down the pros and the cons of the Drevo BladeMaster Pro before giving you my final verdict. And as usual, let's start with the pros. Buckle up, because this is actually a pretty long list in both departments. There's a lot to talk about with this board, and it's kind of a board of extremes in some ways. So in terms of the pros, first thing I want to call out is the generous pack-ins. It was really nice to see that we got 36 extra keycaps. Really nice keycaps too. PBT, nice and thick, better than the stock caps, I must say. So that was nice to see. That nice branded keycap puller, the nice little brusher, that super flashy sticker. I mean, whatever, they're cheap things, but overall, the presentation, the packaging, and the pack-ins were really, really nice. Continuing that sort of theme of a premium feel, this board looks great. Fantastic aesthetics, in my opinion. Obviously, aesthetics are a very subjective kind of thing, but I think this board looks very, very premium and definitely lives up to its price tag in terms of the looks, at least. I think it can run with the big boys and looks just as good as anything from, Logitech or Razer or Corsair or what have you. Similarly, the build quality is very premium feeling. Everything feels really nice under the hands. Even those keycaps, which I'm not crazy about for other reasons, which we'll explain, at least that finish, that matte finish, does have pleasing texture to it, we'll say. But that metal backplate feels nice and thick. The whole board feels very weighty and solid. So the build quality is definitely a strong point overall. Next pro is that control knob. It's novel at the very least. It functions mostly the way it's supposed to, and is definitely a differentiator that helps set the BladeMaster Pro apart from competing products in this price bracket. Also want to call out the 3 different connectivity options. Some people might consider that overkill, but I think it's really nice to have the flexibility. Normally I keep my keyboards wired because I'm sitting there at my PC, but the 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection is great if you want to have high performance, low latency connection without the wire, and Bluetooth is always welcome for connecting to, say, your phone. And the way the BladeMaster is set up, it allows you to cycle between all those inputs. So you could be typing away on your PC in wired mode, and then with the press of 2 buttons, basically, you could be typing away on your mobile device. So great implementation of a variety of connectivity options. Next 2 pros are both to do with the lighting. We've got that lovely backlighting, all RGB of course, with nice bright saturated colors and very smooth gradients. I've said this about other keyboards in past, but this stands out in a league of its own. The only thing that I think comes close is the An Pros, the first and the second one, which both have very beautiful, vivid, smooth RGB backlighting. But this stands up there with the best of them, absolutely. And similarly, that side lighting that goes all the way around, all 4 sides, 360 degrees, if you will, of side lighting that looks really nice and is well synchronized with the backlighting. So well as, for instance, the Royal Kludge G87 that I reviewed recently also had side lighting. They kind of worked independently of the backlighting, and they didn't really synchronize in any meaningful ways. Not the case here. We get some really cool effects that cover the whole face of the board as well as the edges. Also worth calling out is the cherry switches. Now, me myself, I'm not a huge cherry switch purist. I'm happy to use all kinds of different switches. I find it to be a bit of an adventure, and honestly, there are a lot of switches that I prefer over Cherry's branded switches. But if you are a stickler for the brand name, or you have a particular loyalty to Cherry, or you just want to know that there's a certain level of quality behind these switches, Cherry switches are tried and true. They've been tested for decades now. They are very good products, and you pay a premium for those parts. So it is good that at this price point we have genuine Cherry MX switches. And the final pro, and I did go back and forth on including this one. I wasn't sure if I was going to, but I will, with some caveats. I want to call out the mostly good software. Part of the reason I put it on this list is because so much software for configuring keyboards is just crap. It's just really, really bad. This software is not crap. In fact, it's mostly okay. The interface takes a little bit of learning your way around, but all the functionality is there. And it is very well commented. There's lots of little tool tips throughout the interface that help explain what's going on. So from that perspective, I did like the software quite a bit. However, the software will also come up in the cons list in just a second. You'll see why. Hey, would you look at that? I'm standing on the other side of the screen. It must be time for the cons. And there are a handful of these for Drevo's BladeMaster Pro as well. It is not a perfect product by any stretch of the imagination. The first one I'm going to call out is just the general USB wireless adapter woes. And that covers a couple things. The first is that it's a generic USB adapter. There's no branding on it, so when I have several that look identical, I have no way of knowing which one belongs to the Drevo board. The next thing I want to call out about it is that it has nowhere to slot into the keyboard. It is conventional to have a slot where you can put that wireless receiver in there so it doesn't get lost when you're moving the board around, or once it goes into storage or whatever. No such slot on Drevo's BladeMaster Pro, which seems like a pretty significant oversight. In terms of actual functionality, no problems whatsoever with the 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection, but it's all the stuff around it that's problematic. Second con I want to call out, and this is a big one for me, is those thin keycaps. Those stock keycaps are really not good. They are, I would say, below average quality. They are not double shot, so they're just a single piece of plastic that's been coated with that matte finish, which, granted, does feel nice under the fingers, but it's prone to getting marked up with fingerprints. Like, it is smoother than a lot of other finishes I've seen on keycaps, and so it tends to get kind of oily and mucky looking. And also, because it's just a coating that's been laser etched through, it's prone to potentially wearing over time. I don't really have any data to back up how long it's going to last, but I guarantee you it's going to last less time than a double shot cap. So it's just the combination of the thin ABS, the lack of double shot, finish. I don't like the stock caps on this board, despite the fact that they look really, really good. They're just not great in practice. All right, next two cons on this list both have to do with the Genius knob. And I have to keep calling it that because it's a goofy name. That scroll knob that's on the left side of the board. The first is that it is small and slippery. It's actually, for something that is supposed to be a major selling feature of this board, it's kind of hard to access and kind of hard to use. I mentioned that it would really benefit from having some kind of notches or bumps or even like a rubber coating, something to help improve the traction on it. So when I'm scrolling it with my finger, sometimes my finger doesn't scroll it at all. Sometimes it over scrolls it because I'm pushing too hard to try and make sure I get traction. It's just weird that they would make it all smooth without any notches or anything like that. And the second piece of that is that the control knob exhibits lag with custom inputs. I explained this just before we started this pros and cons breakdown, but basically when I rebound it to use backspace on the single click of the knob, it would take about a second for it to register the input and to do it. And then when it did, it's like it was held down for a period of time rather than just activating it once. So instead of backspacing one character, it would backspace like a whole line. So that's not very functional, and that's one of the major selling points of this board. One of the things that sets it apart is that control knob, and I really, really hope that Drevo takes the time to fix that issue with a firmware update or something like that, because right now it's a major drawback. Next thing on this cons list, remember how in the pros we just talked about the software? Well, here it is again in the cons. The software requires you to log in with an account, and I hate that. Maybe it's just me, it's a pet peeve, but I don't think it's just me. There's no really good reason to have to log into this software. Like, yeah, I get it. You can synchronize your settings across the cloud using your account, but how often are you really going to do that? And more to the point, why don't you just have the option to not log in if you don't want to use that feature? It looks tantalizingly like you should be able to do that. There's an offline button on the launcher for the software, but it doesn't seem to work. So I don't know what's up with that. It bothers me when companies force you to make an account to use their software, especially when it's something like keyboard configuration software and drivers. Anyway, done my little rant. Just why? Why have a login? Why? And the last con, and this has sort of been the elephant in the room for this whole review really, is that this board is pretty expensive. It is in the range that you see other mechanical keyboards from other big name manufacturers, as I've mentioned, and it does bring a feature set comparable to a lot of those, but those of you who are regular viewers of the channel will know that I am somewhat of a connoisseur of inexpensive keyboards coming direct from China. And when you put it in that context, instead of against all these well-established North American brand names, when you put it against sort of the whole spectrum of keyboards available out there, the value of Drevo's BladeMaster Pro doesn't look quite so hot. It's not disastrous, of course. If I were to choose between, say, this board and something similar from, I don't know, Corsair, we'll say, the value looks pretty good. This is a feature-rich board. There's a lot here. But when you stack it up against something like, oh, I don't know, Royal Kludge's G87 that I reviewed quite recently, that board has a lot of similar features for about a third of the price of the BladeMaster Pro. Does it feel as nice? No, it doesn't. Does it look as nice? No, it doesn't. The build quality is good? Probably not quite. But in terms of feature set, you're getting something very similar there for a heck of a lot less than Drevo's BladeMaster Pro. So I do have to say that the price is one of the weak points of this board. All right, this has been a long review and it's time to bring it home. So what then, after all of that, is my final verdict on Drevo's BladeMaster Pro? Man, this is a tough one. I'm very conflicted in a couple of different directions because honestly, this board is kind of conflicted. It's a real mixed bag, and that was reflected in what you saw just now in the pros and the cons. Both lists were pretty well populated. So ultimately, Drevo's BladeMaster Pro offers a lot of features. It is feature packed, it looks great, it feels great, and overall it performs pretty well. No problems there, with the exception of that control knob binding issue that I described. So why am I not so enthusiastic about it? I keep asking myself this. I've been, going back and forth because it feels like it should be an easy recommendation because there's a lot of good stuff there. But ultimately, I think it's a combination of a few glaring flaws, which I just talked about in the cons section, paired with a pretty high price point. $150 is well into premium keyboard category. There's a lot of pretty cool boards that you can get for $150. So if this board were coming in like $30 cheaper or, that range, it would become a lot easier to recommend wholeheartedly. I should point out, interestingly, that I'm pretty sure early backers in the Kickstarter got this board for $100 US. I'm pretty sure that was the early bird price for backing. And that is a phenomenal price for this keyboard. Absolutely exceptional. 150, harder case to make. There is, of course, the BladeMaster TE, which I have not reviewed here. I have not had any hands-on experience with, but it has a lot of the features of its more expensive older brother, the BladeMaster Pro. And coming in at $90 is a lot more appealing from a value point of view than the $150 of the BladeMaster Pro. So overall, is the BladeMaster Pro a bad board? No, not at all. In fact, it's really cool to see how Drevo has grown over the last couple of years. This product is hands down better than the first keyboard that I reviewed from Drevo. The build quality, the presentation, the aesthetics, the features, it's all there. Does it get my wholehearted recommendation though? That's a tough one. I think what you need to do is you need to look at other keyboards in their price point that have the feature set that you desire, and you're going to have to look very critically at what they offer versus the BladeMaster Pro. If the BladeMaster Pro has everything you want, if you really want, for instance, a 10-keyless form factor, you really want 3 different connectivity options, your use case supports that, and you think you'll make use of that scroll knob, the Genius knob, then yeah, go for it. Like, I certainly wouldn't recommend against the BladeMaster Pro, but it is an imperfect product in a very, very crowded and competitive segment where expectations are very, very high. And that, my friends, brings another relaxing review to a close, and a hefty one it was. Lots to talk about with this board, lots to consider, lots to test. Special thanks, of course, to Drevo for sending over the review sample that we looked at here today. And if this is a product that you would like to look into more, maybe purchase for yourself, there are, of course, links down in the video description, and I reckon you'll find a discount code or two down there as well, which might apply to your website of choice for purchasing. And of course, special thanks to all of you guys. I hope you found this review informative. I hope you found it relaxing. And I look very forward to having all of you back here next time for another episode of relaxing reviews. Bye for now, guys.